It gives me an avalanche and the most inestimable pleasure for me to officiate a program of such journalistic nature happening live, coming live from Yarona Building in the middle of Alexandria, broadcasting from more community radio stations, and be celebrating over 10 million listeners across the board. That makes sense to us community radio stations. Let me just welcome you tonight. We're coming live from a beautiful building, and we're looking at a standing committee on petitions to hear petitions from communities. This is a live broadcast powered by the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. My name is Colin Hans, as I introduce myself, and just as info, did you know that as a member of the community, you have the constitutional right to petition the Gauteng government and municipalities on any service delivery matter? The Standing Committee on Petitions at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature has convened a petition hearing that started yesterday, Monday, the 29th of March, and continued up to this afternoon, the 30th of March, 2021. And where you could actually, some of you were fortunate to watch the live proceedings from 9 a.m. on both days of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature on YouTube channel, and they searched Gauteng Provincial Legislature on YouTube. And Tuesday, today, we are coming live from 6 p.m. Community radio stations that are taking this live broadcast. We know that it's Alexander FM, that's Teta FM, we know that's Josie FM, that's Moretele, and there's many other stations. I'm just going to give you in order. That is Alex FM, Teta FM, Josie FM, Moretele FM, Lekwa FM, and Kasi FM. It is important that communities in Gauteng to know their rights to petition the Gauteng provincial government and Gauteng municipalities, and are thus entitled to listen to the show and give us a call if you want to air, some of the views, because of it's a long-standing issue of the committees, that standing committee. And with me is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Petitions at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, Ezra Letsoalo. All protocols observed of committees. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dr. Colin, and a good evening to the listeners of all of these community radio stations.
I think it was a handful of events because of you inherited a baggage of complaints, and legit complaints, and we saw you through the proceedings getting emotional because of some of the questions, some of the people who were raising these issues. You felt them to say, hey, really? This is happening in our government.
It certainly has been the case in that when we assumed the office in 2019, what we will have found was that there would have been quite a number of petitions that will have been raised throughout a number of years. And I think to our shock was a number of questions about why is it that those specific petitions were never really resolved, because against the petition there would be somebody, a warm body, a member of our respective communities who will have, at some point expected a particular, intervention, in their favor. And quite unfortunately, that is the, situation that we will have had to contend with.
Now, the right to petition is given and protected in the Act 5 of 2002. It is against this background that the Gauteng Provincial Legislature held a petitions hearing. Herein, petitioners had an opportunity to directly engage with the provincial government and petition standing committee regarding their petitions. Wenalo, you have a right to give us a call as we go on in this wonderful hour. The number to call is 011-440-1396. Alex FM, Teta FM, Josie FM, Moretele FM, Lekwa FM, and Kasi FM. I think the most important question that many people didn't get around it is to actually give us a good distinction between the Gauteng Provincial Legislature and the GPG.
Yeah, so and thank you very much for that question, because I know often at times there are instances where, our community members tend to confuse the two. So there's a level of a differentiation. And I think that stems from the nature of our constitutional edifice, in that if you look at it, there's a principle there that connotes that the separation of powers insofar as how the state is structured, effectively meaning that you have got three branches of the state, one of them being a parliament, your lawmaking institution. But at the level of provinces, it would be what we refer to as a provincial legislature. So provincial legislatures have got a similar standing to parliament. And then you would have the executive. The executive is what ordinarily most people refer to as a government. Safe to say that government might be an all-encompassing, word. And the executive is where you have got ministers, insofar as national is concerned, but at the level of province, obviously it would be your MECs, which is being led by a premier. And then with national, obviously it would be the state president. And then the third branch, which we might not necessarily have at the level of, the sphere of the province, is the judiciary. Obviously, the judiciary is the enforcer of the laws that are, made or passed by, either parliament or the provincial legislature.
Now, Raruna, mandate, there's many things that people are doing out there. A lot of people say standing committee, standing on what? What are the basis thereof? Maybe just to highlight the mandate committee.
Yeah, so we have got a committee called the Petitions Standing Committee. And I usually would say that this is a unique committee insofar as how it functions, but also poised to assist in advancing the role of the legislature. So with your normative portfolio committees, what you will find is that they are aligned to specific departments. So for every one department that you have, you will have a corresponding portfolio committee to play oversight over the program as well as the activities of that specific department. And then you would have standing committees, meaning that their work cuts across the board. They play oversight, scrutiny over all departments in the province. And the Petitions Committee happens to be one of that. But quickly to speak to the mandate of the committee is that our mandate is derived from the Petitions Act, which we will have mentioned earlier on in your opening. And it's twofold. It is to receive petitions submitted by ordinary members of our respective communities. And after having received those petitions, to either adopt or reject them based on the issues that have been raised. So, in so long as matters that are raised through those petitions fall within the executive, and remember the executive will have said that relates to the government of the province, including the legislative authority of our province. So all the laws that relates to our province. And then linked to that is the oversight role that the executive authority plays over the local sphere of government. So we've got a department of COGTA, which oversees the work of municipalities. So in long as the petitions that are submitted in respect of the executive, the legislative, but also related to the sphere of local government, I think our mandate would be that we receive them so long as they are qualifying in accordance with our Petitions Act, and then having received them, process them for possible interventions based on the issues that will have been raised by members of the community.
Moretsi wena kolega go ga intjalo ke itse wa bo utlweletse motlhamong re bua jana o bona le kgang e o ratang go e tsaya motlhamong re bua jana go na le ngongorego e le gore it's long standing and we botsa fela gore kana committee e leng khale ke batla me ku utlwa mo radio jana bile ku utlwa modula setulo wa yone ke se ka tsang karolo ka sone e tsa di notice ga go me o re gopotse tse ding ka gone ha re lebella jana go la le tiro e leng gore e masisi e le gore sala nna e beiwa fela jalo ka re utlwa gore ra rona le modula setulo wa committee e mo gaetsa bua gore kana ba tsene me ba tsena ba handle over di kgang tse le gore di atle di tshwenye di committee yalo di dintse di kgang motlhamong e maleba chairperson rona ke gore ke botse gore the backlog e le gore we inheritile. Does it make you happy gore you've done well, or is it just work in progress?
I think there are two things. Since our ascendancy in 2019, re legile ka thata or re fokotse backlog lo re kreile ana re tsana ka mo kantorong ka 2019. And sebaka lo re shebise gore ke eng se lo re ne se tshwareletse di petition tse. or risa crea thuso e lo reng ya tlhokofala ke maloko a the communities tsa rona. So what we will have done in the main is that there's a number of interventions or strategies that we will have developed to clear off, those petitions. And I think that excites us, other than the despondency that confronted us when we first assumed office. So as we speak, we're quite excited in that there's a movement towards the clearance of those specific petitions. When we arrived, we were speaking thousands. Now we're speaking 3 digits. So initially it would have been 4 digits. Now we're speaking about 3 digits, which are in essence the kind of interventions that we will have introduced have really assisted.
Now, the issues that in I mean, we're looking at the first day's hearing. You dealt with what was patients and, customer service, the building of informal structure called Vlakfontein Clinic, Lenesia. What transpired during the hearing?
I think in the first day of the hearing, there were quite a number of petitions that we will have had to consider. And one of them, as you are rightly stating, is a demand for an expansion of a clinic in Vlakfontein. And the petitioners were really lamenting the fact that, we've got a 2-roomed clinic in a communication which has, grown over the years. So if you were to consider the catchment, the population of the community against the 2-room clinic, it will have appeared that, it was not feasible. And I think we agreed with them. And that is why we will have, also invited the department to come and respond as to why we would have such an abnormal situation, particularly as it relates to the, well-being of our communities. And I think quite positively, the department will have made a commitment, even demonstrated that there are plans to actually build a much more bigger facility. But that in the meantime, they really want to revamp, the existing facility so that they can use it to make provision for other, outpatient services. So where we are, I mean, the petition system really works in that arising from the hearing yesterday, there was a commitment that a community health center, which is much more bigger than what the community has now, would be built, and that the commitment is timed around the beginning of the new financial year, which really excited us that it's something that we would be able to follow on, so that there's actually a delivery on that. But of course, we don't work alone. So in alignment with our sister committees, the Portfolio Committee on Health, we will have requested that they monitor the implementation of the specific commitment. So I'm lifting but one of those petitions that we will have considered. The second one will have been one that related to an old lady who actually stays in Alexander, Bareke Mama Sylvia Nkatani, Momela. Mama Sylvia is aged 80, so is an 80-year-old, a lady who resides in Alexander, who will have applied for an RDP sometime in the 90s and never really got allocated. So she had a reference number, but there was no allocation of any, RDP unit. And then they came to us through, the petition to lament the fact that, it seems as if Mama is not getting any assistance. So yesterday, the situation would have been that her 3 children, 2 daughters as well as a son, came to appeal before us that they needed an intervention, and we could also resolve that particular petition. And the department will have committed that, look, given the age of Mama and the realities that she might soon and Lord forbid that should be the case, Mama would be allocated a house in either of the 3 existing development sites. One is in Riverside, the other one it's in Florov, and then there's another 3rd one. I think it's in Deep Sloan, that side of Deep Sloan. Yes. So the family would just have to make a determination around where they think Mama would be suitable, insofar as the allocation of that specific house. Then we also had another one in Everton of a lady who was removed, criminally from her RDP house in Everton. Everton is in the Val. And she will have stated the fact that, and since she was removed, she will have accumulated quite, a substantive debt of about 40,000. And that unfortunately, because she was not residing in that house, she wanted some kind of an intervention from us. One, on accessing, her house, but number two, on a clearing off. And so in our engagement with, the city of Joburg, as well as the Department of Human Settlement in the province, there will have been a commitment that it's a very serious matter, which I will have put Mama in an awkward position, and that, specific interventions really needed to be employed to ensure that she's not in any way indebted to something that she was not responsible for. So those are about some of the interventions that we will have, employed through, the petitions external hearing yesterday. But of course, today, some of the contentious issues related to the taxi industry. So that is the extent at which the petitions system, goes into dealing about all the matters that falls within the ambit of the executive as well as the legislative authority of the province. So the taxi industry story would have been that there has been quite a number of taxi, associations and groups of taxi operators who will have lamented the violence within the industry, the killings within the industry. And so as a result of the pressure that we will have exerted on the department, you will have found that ultimately the department resolved to have a commission of inquiry. So this morning we received a report on the commission of inquiry on the taxi violence. And I think it was, an emotive session where taxi operators for the first time could interact with that report, but also pose specific questions to the department about some of the other issues. So I think that is, how the petition system functions and the kind of interventions that it's capable of making.
Moretsi wa rona Lokogai, o na le nako ka gore ka kgona go tsena mo radiong go le jalo o ka kgona go letsa. Nomoro ya mogala ke 011 440 1396. O botsana jalo mogaetsere bua jalo le baretsi ba Alexander FM, Theta FM, Josie FM, Moretele FM, Lekwa FM, le Kasi FM. A broadcast mogaetso coming live from Yaruna Building, powered by the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Ke kgangere bua mogaetso ga o lebela di section di dintsi, there have been amendments there and there, and a whole lot of issues are here. But ke batla pisa all these ordinary cases on board, the emotions that we saw. In particular, I was watching you directly to say, this is reality at its best, where you can see the participants and you can feel, this can be on in this dispensation. Now, I remember very vividly that, 2 to 3 years back when we ushered the new committees in, and we all said, it can be business as usual. Is this sentiment echoed well?
I think it is. I think it is. And we really try, our utmost best to make sure that we effectuate on some of the commitments that we'll have made. Well, I can say that if you were to look at the composition of the legislature now, you will find that it has, over the years, become more youthful. And so with the robustness that characterizes, the generation of members of the provincial legislature, obviously it becomes expectant that the style and manner in which they function, but also advance the mandate of the legislature has got to be somewhat different. There has got to be a level of vigor in the manner in which we execute our mandate. But be that as it may, what you will find is that the old way of doing things, wherein where departments are not responsive, they would be left off the hook. I think it's a thing of the past. In that, as we speak, for those departments that would either not respond, as in when they are called to appear before the committee, we subpoena. So we lose that thing of a friendship. So the friendship that we might have as relating amongst the other circles, we lose it. Because here we're dealing with a mandate which is born out of a piece of legislation. And you can almost imagine that that becomes obligatory. So it's not something that you can negotiate around, particularly as it affects, ordinary members of our community. And the understanding on our part is that it's mostly the vulnerable that leverages the system. So you hardly ever have people who are affluent that would say, you know what, I'm going to pen a petition to the petition standing committee. So that is the sense that we have. that it's mostly immediate.
Now, let's come back home. Alexander Harelibella, there was this case, Harelibella Jalo, the encroachment of land and misallocation of RDP home or Alexandria. We're looking at another issue here, the title deeds, early childhood development centers, booking, acceleration here, the Zanspreid mega house development project. Just to touch base on those issues, are there any other that will look into, that will come your direction as a chairperson of the committee, or complaints towards what I just alluded to?
Yeah, obviously there are shortcomings insofar as how the process should be functioning as against what happens in between, because the committee does not control all the variables. Remember, the committee receives the petitions, and once it has received petitions, it refers to specific departments or relevant authorities. And often at times we hold these external hearings to invite departments to come and account or respond on those specific petitions. Now, there are notable challenges that we often come across, and one of them is that you would then have officials of a specific departments either opting not to appear before the committee. And the embarrassment that often gets played out is that you would then have had petitioners availing themselves, and an official of the department who's accountable in respect of a specific program not being there. It embarrasses ourselves as the committee, but I can almost imagine the kind of a scorn to petitioners. But fortunately, our legislation provides measures to deal with those kinds of cases, and I don't think those that will have came before us really leveraged the being of those kinds of measures. And one of them is the power to subpoena. So the committee has got a power to subpoena, effectively meaning that it can call anybody. So it can subpoena the premier, it can subpoena the mayor, it can subpoena any MEC, it can subpoena any MMC. So MMCs at the level of municipalities, including the speakers, various municipalities. So there are those kinds of challenges that we will have to contend with, including yesterday. And part of the resolve was that on those petitions that we could not be able to conclusively deal with, those specific officials would be subpoenaed to appear before the committee in the forthcoming week.
The Standing Committee on Petitions mo Gauteng Provincial Legislature re Ezra Letsoalo re meka me ga dikgang tse dintsi mo gaetso di complaints le gore di fitlhetse ke lona le le batho me ke go welcome gore ga o gona go letsa o letse jalo mo 011-440-1396 go tla re tlhokono tsa khole gago ka le melelo le rata mo gaetso go le jalo modudu a stulo o itse maleme o ke batla go mo leke gape ka le melelo farologane gore mabunje baba isimo sime kanje abantu bathi ayisebenzi lento so ngene eholini nje sikhulume hayi baphume bahambe bathi silalele kodwa there's no results. What do we do then?
Yeah, I'll try it in a different language so that I don't click myself way much. Well, I think there's a level of commitment on our part that were readily available, and we expect that we should also be held accountable insofar as our mandate is concerned. And that is why from time to time we furnish reports on our work to the legislature through the House sittings. But there are other instances where we do outreach programs. So part of the work that we do is also centered around the public participation. So ordinarily, what we will do when we have external hearings is that we invite everybody, including members of the community that might not even have submitted petitions. So we open up so that people that might otherwise be frustrated by one issue or the other will also be empowered to raise them on site. But of course, as we journey on these kinds of undertakings, is that you will find that our support personnel will be on site to assist those that might want to submit petitions when we've got the external hearings. The only limitation now is as due to COVID regulations, in that you needed to consider the number of participants or petitioners that would come into the external hearings. But ordinarily, we would open up our sessions, But there's something that really, excites me, and I think it might be worth mentioning, is that one of the interventions that we will have made, and, we've really been pressurizing the legislature to really fast-track the creation of that kind of a tool, is the development of the e-petitions. Meaning that people can now submit petitions, from the comfort of their homes. No longer need anymore to go to the legislature. But of course, we're just finalizing some of the features. I think when we do launch, we'll invite yourselves, that they call in, as well as all the listeners, so that they follow the launching of this, phenomena, a system that would enable them to sort of, submit petitions with relative ease.
There we go. Now we're taking a call. Call online. Dumela Moretsi. Dumela Moretsi. Dumela.
Hello.
Akhera.
Kaira.
Repeat sa kawan o pizza. No, ga ke utlwe sentle. Ke kopa o ketse lentswe ra ga re utlwe sentle. Caller, is still there? Dintlo ga dina electric. Okay, I think there's a call for no. Are tlogele fela jalo ka khange ga reo ka khola o founa le ko mosebetsing jalo jaaka we tsore community radio stations will make it a point gore le ga o tlhagela loko ka reo tla thusa fa le fa fela thulaganyo eo ke le gore e beeletswe jalo ke bone ba Gauteng provincial legislature gore e tla to department e leng e farologaneng ka go nebile re tla nne re le ba jalo gore tle re go roketse the volume on the site ya di telephone ga itse bona gore re ka thusa jang na Artle mo kgang e ya go lebella ke batla re lebelle the issuing of title deeds, early childhood development centers, bo Sebokeng jalo, acceleration the Zandspruit mega housing development project, also looking at the consequence management to municipalities and departments that don't deliver. What is the committee doing about it? And some petitions are not even resolved for years.
Yeah, so I'll start with the title deed issue. In that there was what we usually would call an association petition. So we've got 4 different types of petition. So this one was an association petition. A number of EDC practitioners will have raised, their grievance around the need for issuance of a title deed, since they were occupying, specific parcels of land, and they will have over the years developed, these ECDs. But unfortunately, they could not be able to operate, meaningful in that they were lacking in those title deeds. Now, through the pressure that will have exerted, the department will have started the process of issuing out of those title deeds. So yesterday, I think the feedback that we're receiving from the petitioners was that yes, the department has started that process, but there's quite a number of practitioners who have not received their title deeds. So in an intermediary role that we'll have played as the committee is that we'll have ensured that those practitioners have a session with the department where they will share the list of those that are still outstanding, so that the department could then be able to cater, of course, for the issuance of those specific title. So it's still a work in progress. We'll have said to the department that we'll give them a month to give us an update report on that.
Beautiful. Ona ba re tsiko ga e selebale gore makhubu a tsang khaso e mo gaitso tswa ko moagong wa ya rona building mo gaitso mo yone Alexandria re bua tshalo Hope FM re fetsa go utlwa gore mo gaitso ke yone re sa bua ka yone Hope FM ra go amogela mo wena ko gae ga o letsa mo gaitso a ke o bua gore o utlwela radio efe a re tse mogala. Caller, good evening.
Hello.
Akhera.
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
Hello?
Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Welcome. I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Le ngutla ntate.
Ke go tla sentle fela ra tlhamalla fela ra go leboga.
ke phadima ka mo ka ferena feng ke mametse le kwa FM ke kopa botsa potso
Yarra. Botsarra. Hello, caller. Caller, are you there? Lekwa FM, are you there? Hakitsi.
Okay, that taba ya petition batho ba ikentseng ka matlung haholo ka mo ka pala wa nkukara
Ke a gutla fela wa kgaoga man ga ke tso kgaola ke
ya ke nana ke network no potso ke hlaile hore jale bana ba ibang le hore ba ikentse na taba di petition ba ba ifumane ka mo ya batho ba ikentseng ba tsantseng ho tswa ka matlung.
Okay, re tla tsa jalo kgaola radio jalo. Question ke ya gore batho ba ikentse mo mantlong. You touched on it, illegal occupation of the land dialo to a point ya gore RDP students tse tse motho o itse o utlwa fela go twa kolota the rates and services fela ga na ntlo. Now this issue, it's a very serious issue le gore batho ba ntse ba violate this issue ya housing because of they say they've been waiting for long. How do we deal with this matter?
Yeah, it's a very prevalent problem. And of course, at a point when we interacted with you, we'll have shared with you that quite a number of petitions that we have actually relates to housing. So housing, there are major problems there. And I think what we'll have shared with the department, because part of what the petition does is to assist departments as a planning, tool. So what we'll have shared with the department was two things. Is that the department really needs to look into ways of creating a one-stop centers, particularly as related to RDP-related matters. Because we are receiving many complaints around, either issues of misallocations, illegal occupations. And there's an avalanche of petitions that we receive. So I'm unable to directly speak to this particular one because the Val is quite broad and there's quite a number of housing projects in the Val. So unfortunately, because there are no specifics around which area is that, we're unable to respond to that immediately. Safe to say that there is a process that the Department of Human Settlement will have said they are working on. And one of the things that will have resolved now, which is something that will have came with us, is that as from the last or the third quarter, the Department of, in fact, all the departments are expected to report quarterly. So every quarter, departments are expected to report on the handling of all the petitions that are referred to them. You see, so if the petition is dealing in that the Padima will have been one of those and has been captured in our system, it will have, in essence, mean that it will have been referred to the department. But I must also mention, the Petition Standing Committee receives petitions on a daily basis, and it doesn't mean they are considered immediately, because we're also contending with the backlog. So even that the Padima is aware of the reference number that will have been given to him, I'm sure just like with any other petition, will have cost for a follow-up on that specific petition. But over and above that, we'll have raised the issue, pertaining to housing, also with the portfolio committee on COCTA as well as a human settlement. Because remember, we're not necessarily playing oversight over, the department. We're intervening on petitions that refer to us. But the broader issues around, RDP challenges and all of that are in the main handled by a different committee, which is the Committee on COCTA and Human Settlement.
Now, the other issue, it's very worrying. Maybe we should also look at the side there. What would you like the communities to do in the situation? God, how lebella? Ufitala ngwana wa 2000. Again, more RDP. Then you ask yourself, is it an issue of lawlessness, or is it an issue it's the system that decides to do as it pleases, or is it a case of Hali Libella? Is there something that can be done to say it can't be right that a 1996 person doesn't have a house, but the child who was born in 2000 is occupying an RDP house? Is the case of now the issue of lawlessness has been so bad that there's nothing we can do about it?
It actually is. I think we shouldn't even attempt to sugarcoat it. It actually is. There's a level of, malfeasance, but also there are criminal elements within some of our agencies, within the department itself, which will have reversed these gains. Because where a person has been, given a reference number, they are given a C form, they are given happy letters, and they would still not be allocated. It means there's a system glitch, which is caused by, a human factor. So effectively meaning that there would be somebody that might have manipulated the system, to allocate to somebody who was not necessarily part of the list. And these are but some of the things that we have lamented through our reports. And one of the things that we have called upon is for, necessary investigations to be caused upon. One other, measure that we will have, demanded was that the department really needs to beef up the unit that looks into all these kinds of cases. So your inspectorate as well as your law enforcement unit that handles such complaints about the RDP misallocations, and it's a very serious problem because minus it, in essence, you will have had a situation where people could easily access these kinds of housing opportunities without any such unnecessary headline. So it's a very, very serious issue which borders on criminality, which borders on corruption. And we hope that through our own lamentations, enforcement agencies such as your SIU will go into the department to really investigate, because unfortunately as the committee we might not necessarily have the capacity to be able to commission those kinds of investigations. Safe to say that we will refer to those that are more competent than us.
Now, the issue of illegal operation at the taxi association, one Reboneko New East the rest, taxi conflict go Zonki Zizwe, Pretoria, Kopanong, and Johannesburg, and unfair elections and illegal taxi operations in Greater Krugersdorp Taxi Association. This looks like it's a big issue. Taxi Hano, when you talk to taxi associations, they'll tell you exactly into abantu bama taxi hayingena umuntu into abantu bama taxi. The taxi issues are taxi issues. Government stay far from it. We formed this wonderful thing under the serious oppression, and today you come and tell us 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But then this is worsening because of some lives are lost, and which is just unfortunate.
Yeah. No, you are quite correct. I mean, that's another major, a challenge that we will have had to contend with. And unfortunately, government can't fold arms when there are people being massacred, when, week in, week out, there are reports of taxi shootings, particularly because it affects our commuters, because they are the users of, these taxis. So, as the committee will have taken it, upon ourselves that we interact with the department, on behalf of those that will have submitted, petitions as related to the violence within the taxi industry. So, in the main, we'll have looked into about 6 or 7 of those specific petitions that will have decried, the levels of taxi violence. And as you are rightly stating, it's something that they will have said we really need to look into. And I think through the pressure that we will have, exerted on the department, ultimately, will have seen the department agreeing to host a commission of inquiry, which will have started in 2019. So that was just immediately after we will have taken over. In that, in the 3 months that were, that we assumed office, there were about 3 of those petitions. So the Boschkop one, the Krugersdorp one, as well as the Kopanong one. And we thought, let's proactively engage the MEC that it seems as if there's a prevalence of the issues, and we'd read a situation where there would be scores and scores of petitions of a similar nature, and hence we'll have initiated a process where the department could be forced to consider hosting a commission of inquiry. So this morning we'll have dealt with the report. So as part of the feedback to the petitioners around what the department will have observed, some of the findings, and of course it will have included or involved rather the petitioners themselves.
Now, Harnopola from the hearings, the implementation of a resolution by the City of Johannesburg Council, the petitioner is Mr. Enos Make, an adult male who resides go 05 plot 51 Zanspruit, submitting this petition on behalf of a resident as Zandspruit informal settlement, did that reach your door? Or Kare, maybe another question following up to that is that it is very easy for the city or municipalities to go on projects, go on communities, but when it comes to the responsibility, that's when you hear this funny word, it is not our discipline, it's a provincial matter. Where do we draw the line on the responsibilities the province and the city, be it as an example, City of Johannesburg?
Yeah. So the manner in which the three spheres of the government works is that much as they are interdependent, so yeah, I think that is the proper characterization, interdependent. But there's a level of a correlation insofar as, execution of their mandate. So what we usually see with some of the petition is that they are core dependencies. So housing happens to be one of those. So concurrent, powers and so on. So the question around housing is one that falls both within the ambit of the province as well as municipalities, in that often at times the municipalities are implementing agencies. So if you were to go to the Zandspruit matter, which was at some point an informal settlement, so if you remember prior to 2017, so Zandspruit will have been regarded as an informal settlement. And then from that point, there will have been a land development application that will have been launched with the city of Joburg. Obviously, the province will have also had to be involved in the process. Now, positively, we received the feedback yesterday around the housing development insofar as Zandspruit is concerned. But there are three portions of land. There's portion 83, there's portion 84, as well as portion 85. And the department, they could present their plans in respect of all three of the portions. Safe to say that there's much work now commencing in respect of portion 83. And I know the petitioners will have lamented that over the years, they will have interacted with the city of Joburg, which will have presented the same reports. And so we really had to test the reports, to make sure that whether, what will have previously been reported on, there's some level of progress. And indeed, we recorded that there is a level of progress in that the budget is now being approved. All the permits that were required, because there will have had to be a purchase of specific parcels of land, will have been authorized. So insofar as we are concerned, in essence, it would mean that there is a level of progress, possibly not so much a progress than what we would have expected, but a level of progress. And we'll have, in essence, agreed that they will give the department a week to give us, all the granular details around how the project, the layout will be structured, so that, the residents of Zandspruit finally could see this matter to finality. Safe to say that it's often not so easy. So some of the interventions that are sought, unfortunately, cannot come about overnight. It's a subject of, departmental processes, which often at times can be rigorous, because, they still have to go through approval stages of the executive council as a whole, but also the legislature itself. So often at times, much of the interventions that are sought, we find that they take a bit of time. So we'll have said to the petitioners from Zandspruit that they bear with us, but that the department must then give us regular updates. But remember the feature that I spoke to earlier on, in that the department is expected to report every quarter, meaning that at the fall of every 3 months, there would be, an update report that will be submitted with the Petitions Committee around the commitments that they will have made.
Now, I imagine you sitting there meeting all the committees that are under you, and you say it's a quarterly report coming to your doorstep. And first thing that I suppose you'll ask is, hey, the numbers were 300, as an example. Where are we sitting at? If your departments are saying resolved are 20 in the 300s, what follows then? Because surely it tells or no, there would be some bad reporting, or else people are just dragging their feet on a particular issue. I mean, a simple issue for something like 15 years. The boundaries. I mean, it tells you, no, somebody decides to shift the buck.
Yeah.
To a point, our people are subjected to, you got to go privately, look for a land surveyor, and you know for a fact that how mu push out no some of a professional atlo bona ka drone hore land impact to the jwang map yana. Honestly, that's not service delivery.
No, definitely. I mean, those are some of the hurdles that we often have to contend with. But I think on the part of the Petition Standing Committee, and I suppose for other committees, is that we don't wait, for the receipt of reports only. So the receipt of reports is but a standard procedural mechanism. But that in between there would be committee inquiries that might be undertaken. There would be oversight visits to monitor, a process. I mean, progress insofar as the commitments that will have been made. So there's a monitoring and evaluation tool. Safe to say that often at times, much as we will have anticipated or expected desired outcomes, not coming about, would then cause for the department to appear before the committee to explain themselves. Often even in the presence of petitioners themselves. So there are those, instances where that, happens, and will pass a recommendation. So ordinarily what will come through the quarterly reports is that different committees will pass recommendations around when specific tasks or interventions ought to be caused on the part of the department. And we work around those specific time frames. And the department, as a result of that, is able to hold those departments accountable.
Mo tsena ga ile go no tlang go gae motlhamo o rata go tsa karola mme ga o itse o ka dira jang. Nomoro ya mogala e santse me fela jalo 0114401396 ke amogela makubu a radio mo gaetso Alex FM, Theta FM, Josie FM, Moretele FM, Lekwa FM, Kasi FM and Hope FM. Letsa khaso ka tlhamallo jalo me ga rata go bua le rona o batla go botsa jalo motlotlegi mo gaetso from the Gauteng Provincial Legislature bua ka the chairperson of the standing committee Re Ezra Letsoalo mo gaetso. I believe this issue of open door is just one word that we use loosely. Are you operating on open door policy?
No, we certainly do. In fact, that is but one of the first things that I will have said to the membership of the committee, that the only way in which we can impact on the petitions that we have and push them back, because there was quite a number when we assumed offices that were readily available. But I suppose that is what is expected of us as a public office holders, including on the issue that you spoke to. And I thought maybe we might not have spoken to it, particularly because it's a matter that is related to an area where we are. So the issue of Mama in Alexander around the encroachment is it's an issue that stems from 2010, where there was a garage built which protruded on the property of a Mama. Then the municipality actually demolished the garage. But then some 5 years later, the neighbor went back to the sons of Mama. Hey, I just want to extend a bit something, but at the age of a retirement, I will demolish that structure. And what we will have found is that, that hasn't happened. The neighbor has since refused to demolish that structure. And so the petitioners had to come back to us. So it's a secondary, petition linked to the first. But the first will have been, so in essence, it's not so much a 10 matter. So the 20 matter will have been resolved. But then later, there was an allowance on the part of the sons who will have granted the neighbor permission to build, another structure which protruded into the yard of Mama. But it's a matter that we're on top of. The only unfortunate thing is that the responsible official that was supposed to deal with that specific matter would not have appeared before the committee. But fortunately, we had been able to speak to the mayor of the city of Joburg and Tate Makubu, as well as the MMC of corporate services, Melo Iso Masuku, who gave us an assurance. In fact, Masuku was as passionate. Or this is a matter that I'm taking up upon myself to follow up. And already, they will have communicated that they are meeting specific teams to really, cause for necessary interventions in respect of that matter.
Moretsi dikgang di dintsi go le jalo rena le kgang ele ya ga Miss Phumzile Mtshali di dintsi tse le gore ke tsa bagolo jalo re fetsa go bua ka mme Mabel Butani wa mo Alexandria fela fa mme ra itse gore no e lebelelwe ka matlho a mashibidu kgang eo ka re itse the last report and re itse gore no there was awaiting progress relating to the commitment of the hearing held on the 17th of March just to fast forward to 2017 to demolish the wall. Go le jalo tsantse re latela kgang e wena mme Butani ra itse ka kgang ya gago Miss Velemina Singolene o na le fela mo kgang eo re lebella jalo mo ga itse gore go le jalo a re tsana to okay all right now a re lebelle kgang ya gore ka itse gore go sa phina it's part of your kgang e le gore wa itse gore no a gona ntwa gore no it's just a committee ga ena meno ra itse gore o sa phina batho ba ntse ka gone batho ba ntse ba na le go tsa committees for granted if an issue of that matter e tsagala gore o de sa phinile motho no tla wa rabe ka gonne kgang e ke a moduli wa area so motho ba sa khone go tla maybe how important is issue ya go comply to committee alone?
Yeah, look, what we have observed is that there's an entrenched culture where people often take things for granted. And so the Petitions Act imbues us with the powers to subpoena. And if, whichever person that would have been subpoenaed does not appear, they are actually, as guilty of an offense. And this is built into the Petitions Act, effectively meaning that we can bring this before any lower court for a thorough, adjudication of the kind of matter that it would fall into, such that, those specific people can be prosecuted. So it's a very serious thing. But the last thing that I would want to mention is that we're in the process of reviewing the legislation to strengthen the powers to subpoena, but to also hold specific people who are called before the committee to come and account and do it to the letter of the law.
Moretsi e ke na kone re filwe jalo mo radio nya rona re bua jalo mo gaitso re leboga jalo ba tsa karolo ile Alexander FM, Theta FM, Josie FM, Moretele FM, Lekwa FM, Kasi FM le Hope FM na ke le Colin Hans mo gaitso ke re mo go wena pula a gonele tsa ka re itse mo gaitso kgang e tswela jalo and it is important for communities mo Gauteng to know their rights to petition the Gauteng provincial government and the Gauteng municipalities and are thus entitled to be listened to to have the grievances attended to. Ere ke go leboge modula setulo ke re motlamorata go sia molaetsa bofelo mo baretsi ba rona.
No re le baretsi ko gae re rona re khono kreiwa mo dinambeng tsa rona tsa ko legislature ileng 011 498 5555 011 498 5555 but I will throw in the span as well. And give my legislature number, which is 066 043 0082. So thank you very much to all the listeners.
Thank you so much. That's all the time we had. And re tla bua gape re tsana mo tholong tsotlhe tsa di radio ra leboga.